Welcome everybody back to another BOLDcast One Piece review podcast thing for Thriller Bark.
The best arc.
I think it might be the best arc so far.
And I feel like some people
That's a
like,
molten take. For
I
a lot of
feel like
people.
what's kind of crazy about it is like the whole nothing happened thing is clearly a meme, but I don't think it's necessarily a lie that like the first like the only reason that people really like nothing happened but so much happened is like to do with like the last few episodes of the arc.
Yeah.
Not the arc as a whole. And I think that that's kind of the thing of like, oh, this is like almost a fillery arc up until the end when it goes crazy, you know? But for me, I feel like it might have been my favorite arc even without that stuff at the end.
I think I think that it definitely was one of my favorites for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Even without the stuff at the end, but with the stuff at the end, with the Kuma fight encounter, you could say it's probably my favorite one so far.
Yeah.
And that's weird too because it's not nearly as sad as the other arcs that are up there at the top, like Drum Kingdom or whatever.
It's emotional.
Yeah, like Alabasta and Drum Kingdom are probably my other ones that are really up there. I liked Water 7 and Ennies actually Ennies Water 7. Water 7's up there too. I don't know. They're all pretty close like as far as the like most of the arcs. Like some arcs are kind of stinkers or not even really stinkers, just like didn't have the real punch to them. And then there are the ones that do have the punch to them. And yeah, for me like Thriller Bark is probably my favorite one so far. And then but it is weird that it doesn't have like, you know, Brook's backstory is really sad, but it wasn't like the tearjerker. It was more like really existentially sad, you know, other than the Laboon stuff. That was really sad.
Laboon. Yeah, but that's Laboon. Like you can't compete with Laboon. It's kind of like Chopper. It's like if anything sad is happening with like a really pitiful
Cute little guy
animal.
Yeah.
So this is like we kind of what we're talking about right now, but just to expand on it, Christian asked, where does Thriller Bark rank in terms of arc setting and atmosphere? Because I think that is the thing that really sets this apart. Like a lot of the other things, obviously, like, you know, Skypiea, it's like an island in the sky and everything's very different. And, you know, like what, like I feel like all of them have like a distinct setting, but I feel like nothing really like immediately captured my attention and like drew me into the total vibe of it as much as Thriller Bark so far.
Yeah, the atmosphere is a lot like that it really carried it. It really set the tone at the beginning. And yeah, I think that if the arc didn't, like, you know, you take everything else, like, you know, it's a good One Piece arc without the atmosphere, but the atmosphere is what really sets it apart. I like in a lot of ways, I think. Because they could be fighting a bunch of random fodder dudes that are like magically enhanced or something, you know, like it doesn't need to be zombies and Halloween-esque and all that kind of stuff and all the stitches on everybody and the wall paintings and all that kind of stuff. Like it can just be pirate guys, you know, they could just be regular pirates or like weird little creatures or something, you know, but the fact that it is that style to it really does like completely change it, you know, because we got like lore, we got foreshadowing of like future emperors and big reveals and characters and a lot of like addition, like with what the hell's up with Oars, what was his like thing back in the day, like we know a little bit, but we don't really, you know, we haven't really seen like a flashback or anything, or is that going to come back at some point? Is Oars like related to something else? There's so much there that has implications for us learning so much about the world, and so which is what you want out of like a good One Piece arc so far, is it's like it builds on the history and it gives us something to think about and something to remember and be like, oh, the next arc, oh, remember last arc, like with the Vegapunk stuff and things like that. And yeah, we got the stuff with the Vegapunk, stuff with Kuma, some kind of connection with Dragon and some sort of like, you know, Kuma's very interesting. Like there's so much going on as far as like a really active, really good One Piece arc. But I don't think it would be as strong in my mind. It wouldn't be nearly as memorable if it didn't have the the style to it.
I just think that, and I think a lot of it also is kind of like this nostalgic thing. You know, when we first started the arc, we said that it was kind of reminiscent of a Scooby-Doo style adventure. And I think that that also really plays into it and makes it memorable. And it's, you know, you're able to tie it to other things in your life and other, you know, shows and experiences that you've had. And, you know, you're able to sort of immediately recognize all of the, sort of tropes that are going on of, like, you know, the invisible man and the paintings that their eyes follow you, and, you know, zombies and stuff. So I think that taking all of these things that are pre-established and things that we already kind of know about, you know, allowed for a very expansive kind of world building moment where you didn't really have to like say a lot, and us as the audience was able to just like see things and interpret it because of our like own preconceptions, you know, of the way that like a horror movie or like a spooky place would work, you know, with zombies and stuff. And I think it did also add to some of the humor elements as well, like the severely injured old man kind of thing. Like, you're like, oh no, there's zombies around, and then there's just this guy that looks like a zombie, but he's just a severely injured old man. And it's something that's just so silly, but to me is just very genuinely funny, you know, and kind of unexpected. So I really like the arc, just for every sort of stylistic choice that was going on. What? We're working. Oh, Sanji Joestar asked, what are your thoughts on the Straw Hats combinations and pairings throughout the arc?
Well, I mean, the Chopper, Nami, and Usopp like gang at the beginning is like unrivaled. Like again, similar to just the atmosphere in general. If like we see what happens when one of the other characters is walking through the same thing and it's not even a problem, but like it just, the arc wouldn't be the same if it wasn't those three. As far as later, I liked the Franky Robin when they were with Brook. What other pairings were there really? It was Luffy was off by himself, running around.
We got some good like fighting mashups. We had like the whole docking incident, and yeah, we had, I think it was like the Robin and Chopper like fighting Hogback together and stuff. So I feel like there's some cool little pair ups, and I feel like, you know, we have so many people now. And I think the other thing that I really appreciated about this arc was that everyone felt like they were like, they would come together and do something, and then they would split off and they would do something else, you know? Like I feel like there was a lot of mixing and matching going on, and people kind of stayed in the fight for a lot longer. Like, even if they were off doing something else, they were still like doing something, you know?
Yeah, it wasn't. It's something that we always talk about, of how you separate things, and that's gonna become like even more important. So I'm glad that it's not as egregious as it used to be so far. But you know, if Oda's gonna keep adding people to the group, like, we're already swollen. We've been swollen to the point that there's not nearly enough time to focus on everybody. This is something that, like I mentioned, I think last podcast, and now that we already have somebody new after just getting Franky, like, and I by the way, I like Brook and I like the addition, or maybe I will, maybe I won't, maybe I'll be disappointed by it, but I like the prospect of it. He seems like an original character. He doesn't seem like, you know, a VV to Nami situation where it's a little bit too similar to someone we already have. Like, he fits to the group in a good way, but we'll talk about Brook in a second. What I'm getting at is that yeah, I liked the way that when people got separated, it was like, or people got knocked out. You know, when it's the idea with the shadows was really interesting, because then we got, you know, a couple strong people to get knocked out for a little bit and then come back as zombies for a little bit. So then, because in an encounter, like, you have the main characters and then you have the people they're fighting. Yeah. Well, you're writing out some people on our team so that the other characters can have a chance to like fight somebody else and be, you know, the main focal point. Well, if the characters that are knocked out are the enemy, then you're kind of double dipping in the sense of, it's the best way of having your cake and eating it too. The problem as far as a whole series thing is that that's not a repeatable strategy unless it just becomes really silly. And the whole shadow thing is like, I imagine it might come back as Moria's still alive, but my point is it worked in a particular way, and I like the way that people were written out when they needed to be written out and came back when they it felt very fluid and natural. It didn't feel like, oh, Luffy got stuck between buildings or whatever, like, oh, Enel just showed up and then zapped Sanji or whatever, and then he's just insta gone, just as a show of power, but also because we just don't have enough, there's not enough tension if everybody's running around. 1, 2, more importantly, it's the story's spread too thin if it's amongst all these different people all the time. So it's going to become a problem more. In this arc, I really liked it, but in the way that it was done, it was really cool, but it probably won't be able to be repeated unless more people have a similar power where they steal the spirit of the main person or the person that's going to be written out or be on the back burner in order for them to fight against the crew, so that there's kind of this double dip. Like that's what I mean by it worked in a particular way in this arc. But I liked it. The matchups were good. Yeah. And I like the way everything kind of flowed. It felt natural. Like
I do also think, like, even without knocking people out, I think that there was enough, like, I feel like the way that, like, I feel like everyone kind of got their chance to shine. Like, I feel like every character kind of had their moment. And I really like that, like, especially since we have so many more people. Like, even Nami got to, like, absolutely, like, taser Absolom and then come in and then, like, zap Oars as well in, like, a very triumphant moment. And Usopp as well was just destroying this arc. He was absolutely on fire. And it was just so good to see, like, in an arc where, like, especially those two, it's like, they spend the first half of the arc just being complete crybabies and, like, running around and getting scared of this haunted house, to then have, like, such a comeback with some really good moments. It was quite satisfying, I think.
I agree. It's and like that. I think that's it's I feel like a lot of it's been so long. Like, I don't want to directly do a comparison to Ennie's Lobby, not because I don't think that it's worthwhile, but just because I kind of like was just getting through a lot of Ennie's Lobby. I felt very fatigued in it, which is weird that I didn't as much in this one.
Yeah.
I don't know. But my point is, like, I want to compare them, but I don't want to do too much injustice to Ennie's Lobby because I don't remember it as freshly. But I really feel like the focus on fights and matchups and things like that, while not as, like, serious and intense, like, all the time, it felt like it felt like people used their abilities, like, really well and in creative ways. Where in Ennie's Lobby, it was a lot of, like, clashes. It was a lot of, like, more not always, like, it not like it wasn't. That's why, like, I don't want to compare it too much because it's not fair, because I'm not going to give Ennie's Lobby the credit that it deserves by comparing it less favorably to Thriller Bark. They're two arcs that serve two different purposes. I guess all I can say without getting too into it and putting my foot in my mouth is just that I really felt satisfied by, like, the switch ups or, like, the twists or little, like, most of the time. Sometimes it felt like it was really stalling. I think that's like, I think in Ennie's Lobby it didn't feel like the story was stalling as much. But in this arc, a lot of times it felt like, and maybe it's because the anime pacing was worse, so then I'm confusing it, but there were plenty of, like, oh, we need to I don't even have that good of an example. I don't know. So maybe it was the anime pacing. It was just, I think that's the biggest downfall, is just that it felt like it was stalling, but a lot of the fights felt very, while not as tense, a lot more, maybe not more creative, just very creative. I don't know. I just really liked it. I don't even know how to really put it, because I don't know if it's worth it to put it above Ennie's Lobby. Not just because I'm worried that other people disagree, but just because, I don't know, just because I liked it doesn't mean it makes it better in a way. I don't know. But I really I just loved the way that everybody kind of pulled their weight. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, there was a question that kind of had to do with this. Let me just find it quickly. This isn't the question, but I'll ask it right now while I keep looking for it. Extra Crispy said, "It's crazy how well the atmosphere of this arc matched up with the time of year you watched it in. With that in mind, how much do you think watching this in October added to your enjoyment of the spooky theme for this arc?" I think that it definitely helped. Similar to how
100%.
like the whole like Chopper story was in the winter for us last year.
Yeah.
And that like I feel like took it up a notch. I think I still would have liked Thriller Bark if it wasn't in October, but I feel like
something
it
about
added
it
to it. And
something
it was
about it
fun.
really added, like watching Thriller Bark and then going out and with the leaves changing and it getting a little bit more chilly and putting on cozy clothes and stuff. Like it, like I feel like it matched the vibe a lot, and putting on the nice candles and things. Yeah, it just it all lined it. I really think we got extra out of it. And you know, maybe food for thought, maybe if you really disagree, if you're out there, you really disagree with our like favoritism of this arc, maybe put that into account, that you know we were very primed up vibes wise for this this part of the story.
Yeah.
I wonder, you know, I guess you guys could say, is it I recognize that it's probably very not even controversial, but a little bit of a hot take to say that we enjoyed this arc more than Ennie's Lobby. I think to a lot of, especially older time One Piece fans, it's probably pretty, I guess, yeah, controversial. Would you guys say that we're like crazy for that, or is it more common than maybe I think, or that we think?
Or
I'm interested
for
in
the
that.
reasons that we like it for, not just like
Yeah, I think a lot of people might put it above because of the Kuma stuff. Like
Yeah.
if they do put it above, I think a lot of fans would. But like for us, it's really the whole package. Like everything just felt so.
it felt like everything was just working together, and yeah, I found that I did find the question. I'm Zeet. One Piece arcs so far have always had a component or multiple components of comedy, but this is the first arc that was by far heavily centered around by far as heavily centered around comedy as this one. Do you like this kind of more breathing space, more unserious tone coming from Water 7 and Ennie's Lobby? And do you think the comedy aspect wore off faster and or didn't always hit because of the anime's pacing during this part of the story?
There were times where it honestly hit even like more funny, like the specifically the one episode where it was literally just Moria walking towards oars, like
Yeah.
until 14 minutes in or something like that. Like
It's just
like a 6-minute recap, and then nothing happened. It was just bats flying, which I mistook as birds because I was so zoned out that I thought they were birds. But like I just like completely. Anyway, as far as the comedy, I think the reason why it feels like I think the comedy is like really the lighthearted tone, like that. It's a difficult thing because I think a lot of people live for the one twinkling moment, this like spark at the end or near the end of arcs, like, you know, Luffy getting a new power up, or fucking nothing happened, like that moment, that's what they really remember. And it's the same in every shonen series. It's like you remember Super Saiyan Goku, you don't remember the 50 episodes of like Frieza versus Goku and like how slow it was. Like maybe you remember the start of the fight and the end of the fight. Like people remember and live for like those moments. And I think I don't. I used to, but as I've gone on, I really am more holistic about the things that I enjoy. Like it needs to, like, in order for it to be like top tier, it needs to encompass everything. So and it's One Piece can feel, it's not even like Whiplash, but it's like it does so much to set the lighthearted tone, and so much to like give itself the out and not be treated as serious. And we've talked a lot about like how that helps its credibility writing wise, because, you know, if it was super edgy and serious all the time and then contradicted its own rules and like all this other, or like was just really wacky and just like ass pulls or like changes up, just like retcons, but not retconning something that's already happened, just like building up towards something and then changing trajectory. And like, okay, it wasn't a retcon because it wasn't set in stone, but clearly there was like a deviation in intention from the writing perspective. One Piece does a bunch of weird stuff like that. It's usually pretty consistent, but it's really weird, and it's not like there's a lot of things that like just are just odd. And it's clear, we've talked about it a lot, that Oda does it on purpose because it's supposed to be lighthearted. It's not supposed to be so serious. So then for the serious arcs to be really serious, like it's sometimes like I think of Skypiea, where it's like, oh, the Sky Island, like all the Shandians and stuff like that. It's like these are big ideas and everything, and I feel like there is a place for them in One Piece, and as we go on, I can see we're definitely getting more serious and intense. But like, what I'm saying is there's so much going into setting up and preparing, like laying the groundwork for a lighthearted thing that like catches you with some serious shit at the end. And so that's why an arc like Thriller Bark hits so hard, is because it feels the arc's intentions and the groundwork that the story has laid with the characters and all of their particular backstories and the way that they act and interact with each other, just the whole tone of everything. When the arc like lines up with that perfectly, like it's lining up with what One Piece is to me, you know, like I think that's what it is. It's like Thriller Bark feels particular in the whole Halloween aesthetic, but like it feels so One Piece in everything. Like it hits everything perfectly to me, except for the anime pacing. Because it's not so serious. It's not so intense. There is some stakes to it, but it's ridiculous and it's lighthearted, and that's like the real focus for most of it. Like the fact that even Moria, and then Moria is like kind of a tragic character as well, like a Don Krieg revisited, but is actually interesting and a little bit sad, you know, like but for the most of it, he's just a big fucking shallot walking around. Like it's ridiculous. And it's supposed to be ridiculous, and that's One Piece is ridiculous. It's not super serious. And I just, it feels so liberating. And maybe that's because we're reacting to it and there's some pressure to like really, I think, like take things super seriously. Yeah. Maybe that's part of it. So it's from our perspective, this is like a really breath of fresh air because what the series is trying to pull out of us and what we're supposed to be feeling is like, you know, as far as like an audience perspective.
I think a lot of the time in previous arcs, I can get kind of frustrated because sometimes the comedy is like not meshing well with maybe the intensity of the story or something. Like I you know, you kind of love when there's an intense moment and then there's like a gag out of it. But then a lot of the times I felt like the like sometimes things just haven't quite lined up. This was the first arc, and I think because it was kind of like a Scooby-Doo thing. Like it was comedy. There was a lot of like running around, getting chased by like crazy creatures, and it was just really funny. And a lot of the jokes were just genuinely funny in a way that I think like sometimes the comedy didn't hit for me as much in like a decent portion of the previous arcs. And you know, that could just be because, you know, they were playing on different tropes that were more familiar to us. You know, with like the, you know, the haunted house Halloween type of thing. But I think also it was just the tone, and I felt very free to watch and just react to the show without feeling like, oh, I hope I don't like laugh at this thing that other people think isn't funny and then get shit on because people thought that it was the coolest and most serious moment ever when I thought that it was just kind of ridiculous, you know. Like it felt like the tone going into it was like that. It was lighthearted and it stuck with it, and the jokes were funny, and I didn't take anything too seriously. And then at the end, it like slams you with some really crazy shit, and then it was super effective. And I feel like I was able to, because of that, I feel like I was able to get very invested in the end, and that was like the most into One Piece potentially ever, because in those final moments where like nothing happened, but it's like it was so crazy. And I think also part of it, what was really good is that there was so much like silliness and a lot of funny jokes, and like that kind of got extended, whereas the intense parts didn't get extended, and we didn't have like the parts of the Luffy and Moria fight that were extended were them like chasing each other through the bushes, or like, oh, it's the bat things again, and they smack the wall and then they come back, and like that was extended. But in the final fight, it was quite tight, and like everything was, you know, working as it should to create the amount of hype and build up the tension. And then we have the moment where Oars gets defeated, and it's like, oh, that was kind of anticlimactic. And then Kuma comes out. You know, it's just so. I feel like I just enjoyed the arc, and was able to, because of some of the comedy in the front being really funny. I felt like it kind of like relaxed me to then get surprised by the end, you know?
Yeah, I agree. It really felt like I was feeling what, because like, you know, we're kind of non-traditional people as far as reactions go. I think I think that a lot, maybe every One Piece reactor deals with this, but it feels a lot of times like we aren't the normal type of people that people generally want to see react to One Piece. That's what it kind of feels like sometimes, is like we're not giving people what they wanted or were expecting out of a lot of moments. And I'm not just talking about the Rob Lucci thing. It's just kind of in general, because people are like, we're just kind of, we look at things differently. We experience things, it seems like, differently than a lot, maybe different than most people, but most likely, at the very least, different than a lot of people expect reactors.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, this part of what made this such a good experience is like everybody was totally on board with how we were experiencing it, and it didn't feel like there was this weird dissonance or disconnect between us and the audience. And I know that like, since we're big on review, that it's not something that should be factored in, maybe, because it's kind of, you know, it's less a reflection of the series itself, and it's kind of influenced by this particular way of viewing the series that you know isn't applicable to most of watching experience. So, you know, what I'm saying is I feel kind of weird like being so into it, but that is what it is. A lot of it is because it just felt like I was a normal One Piece fan. Like I felt like I was in line with what is supposed to be going on in your head when you're watching it. And that normally it's like we're a few points off, or a few, not even off like wrong, but like just off of what clearly the majority of people were feeling when they were experiencing it. But it was so much more relaxing.
Not even what they were experiencing while watching it. And a lot of times, this was very common in Naruto as well, sort of a nostalgia bias or a knowledge of future events bias upon certain moments, that like we don't know if anyone comes back or any type of thing, but then other people are like, oh, you didn't react crazily to like certain moments, but like to us it wasn't that crazy. If we find future information that then retroactively makes a moment crazy, and in hindsight it's like, oh my god, that was huge, you know, that changes things. But it's all about, you know, a first opinion. And yeah, I agree that this arc, I just felt like so
locked
into
in.
it. I felt locked in. I felt like so invested. I think part of it is like, yeah, the theme. Also part of it is, yeah, it did feel very One Piece. It felt reminiscent of like the earlier parts of One Piece, like in you know, when before we went in the Grand Line, even like, and maybe the shortness of it helped, and the fact that we're on this like self-contained kind of Halloween island, you know. But it I don't know, it just felt fun and fresh. And I think that's the other thing, is we had several arcs where we like go to a place and there's like political discourse or like you know, like in Alabasta, it's like this big thing. It's like this huge thing going on, and then you know we go to Skypiea and we're like in this huge thing that's going on, this big war essentially that's going on. And then we go to Ennies Lobby or like Water 7, and then there's like a conspiracy going on. And then we go to Ennies Lobby and it's just like a battle. You know, and we're overthrowing the government and we're declaring war and burning down their flag and stuff. And it's like, these are all like huge things. So then to like tone it down and be like, you know, we're getting these people's shadows back and we're fighting zombies, you know, it was the switch up that I think was really needed, you know. I like it.
Yeah. I really liked it. I think that it was awesome. And yeah, I hope that continues. Like, I hope that this feeling of that we're like, yeah, it's funny because it's kind of literally just the meme that everyone always says every arc of like, oh man, this is when I became a One Piece fan. Like, but it's kind of insane that like that's died down a lot. Like, you know, I don't think anybody like. I don't think I've seen that comment so far for the nothing happen stuff. But like, imagine that's the time 377 episodes in. Then you're like, oh, I wasn't a One Piece fan until how many hundreds of hours?
Like, it's kind of a meme, but I feel like, at least for most arcs, I do feel like I get like, oh, now I really see it. Like, I feel like we've had that moment like 5 or 6 times that we're like, yeah, I see what people are talking about.
Yeah.
And then like a couple arcs will pass and be like, now I really see what they were talking about. Like it just, I think just because it builds on itself and it gets better. And I think that is, you know, the mark of good storytelling, because you don't want to have a moment in like season 2 of a show where you're like, this is where I lock in.
Yeah.
And then like nothing impresses you past that point. And you're just like riding on the coattails of like one really cool thing, you know?
Yeah.
Like you want it to keep getting better and better. And for me, like there's like Skypiea was a little bit of a downturn, but like I feel like with like after Water 7 and Ennies Lobby and now Thriller Bark, I feel like I'm more invested in the characters and the world than ever before.
Yeah.
You know?
100%.
Mm-hmm. There was a question from Chakoboshi who asked, how do you feel about Brook so far? To some people, his introduction can be a bit off-putting with his eccentricity and perverted remarks. After learning that for the most part, the lack of social etiquette is a byproduct of the 50 years he spent alone on a ship, does that make you look at his introduction any differently?
I didn't like the "can I see your panties" thing. Like, that was at the very least not the most egregious example of such a thing in this arc, or in the show in general. Mm-hmm. I think.
And I think
I didn't care about that. But like that, maybe that would have rubbed me the wrong way. Maybe, but like it was like he's such a ridiculous character that it doesn't like. You could say the same. Here's the thing. Here's a good comparison. You could say the same for Absolom, that he's like such a ridiculous character. But like Brook is a skeleton man and like was clearly joking. Like it was. I mean, maybe he wasn't 100% joking. Like maybe that's the joke, is that he wasn't. But like, I think the idea is that. I think the problem. Sorry, what was the actual question before I go on a rant?
The actual question was, Brook from his introduction and then learning like his
I don't think
all that time.
Yeah, so I didn't care about like the lack of social etiquette. You know,
I don't think I really did either, because I think when he was like actually introduced, like the first we saw of him with like this creepy singing and like the ship.
Ooh,
like,
that was so
like
good.
It was so good. And I think like that was just like it was a joke, and I didn't get the impression that was made to that he said that, or that Oda made him say that to like make him be super perverted and like disgusting. It was more to like give a chance for everyone to be like, what the fuck, and like, you know, bash him or something.
Yeah.
And like create this like, okay, there's a creepy ass skeleton being super creepy on this creepy boat with this creepy music. This is like potentially the creepiest part of One Piece so far. This like unsettling, like weird thing. Now, how do we like shock that and like break that apart and like show his personality and that he's like a wacky guy? You know, it's like what's the most like kind of shocking and like you know like how do you like he's creepy? How do you then make him silly? You know.
Yeah, I didn't have a problem with it, so his backstory didn't change it. I'd like to talk about the perviness and give a check-in on that based on like the Absolom thing. I don't know if you have a question related to that.
There definitely are questions about that. Let me just find one. I know that there's a bunch of them, but this is the first one that I saw right now. 100 Rainy asked, it felt like Absolom, his behavior, and his fruit only existed for the punchline of Sanji's extreme jealousy. In your opinion, was there any way Absolom and his subplot could have been better written, or was it all largely unnecessary? What would you change?
Well, yeah, it was clearly about the joke with Sanji, but like, I was so ready to go on a rant, but I don't even know if I have the energy to like talk about and frame all of this properly because I don't know. I did Absolom sucks, but he doesn't just suck like there's it's a difficult thing, and I think the difference is kind of exemplified with Brook. If you compare Brook and Absolom, is like Brook like doing that "can I see your panties" is just a crass silly thing, but like when a character like Absolom comes along and it's like way more forceful and way more, it's not just like googly eyes at a girl, it's like licking sinister. Up Robin's chest, and then Robin doesn't react crazily or doesn't have a real reaction, and you know she's a little bit, you know, she's rough, you know, she's built different, you could say, but she's still a woman, and like I feel like whenever this comes up, everybody gets very sensitive to like wokeness, and I don't even want to talk about that. But why I'm bringing it up is that it's not about, to me, that kind of thing isn't what's wrong with it isn't even about any kind of politics or social whatever. It's not even about that. It's like not for anything. Like it's not like like Absolom being a creep and going over the line is a good example of like an author not really thinking about what they're portraying or using, you know, because he could have achieved the same effect of silly, creepy, pervy guy that's like normal in anime by not doing all that shit or creeping on Nami in the shower. It's like it's like Oda doesn't see the difference between those things. So when he portrays it, it comes off as extremely weird, because then it's like, I'm not saying this even necessarily about Oda, it's other authors as well, like go even further. And when there's that kind of like blind spot, you can't help but question like okay, so why are you putting this in here? Is it for your own like weird satisfaction? Because some authors do that. We've talked about that a decent amount in other series, where like authors put sexualization in and maybe it's like of a girl that's a little bit younger, or you know, a weird specific kind of fetishism like that they portray in their thing, and it's like, oh, well, it's just a random thing, don't complain about it. Well, no, it's like it's a pattern, and the author's doing it to like portray something, and like kind of, it's in a way like dog whistling about this fetish that they like, or like exposing themselves in this weird way, in this like coded way, you know, like that's why a lot of authors do that. I don't know if Oda was doing that with Absolom. I don't think that he was. I think that that's like what I was just talking about was a more extreme version, but the whole thing with Absolom and him being more creepy and like more like not even just creepy, but like he's not just, because a lot here's, and then this is what a lot of people say, it's well, Absolom is supposed to be a bad guy. This is all there to make him bad. Well, the thing, and I agree, I don't think that Oda put that there to like, oh, why are you mad at Absolom? He's clearly just doing normal, creepy anime guy stuff. No, I think Oda did it because Absolom's supposed to be, it's supposed to be viewed negatively. But there's a scale to these things, and I don't think it seems clear to me that it wasn't as serious as those things are. And I don't like, then the question is it so, like, what's the big deal? Like, does it matter? And I guess maybe not. Like, I don't think that people watching One Piece see Absolom licking up Robin's chest or like fondling Nami in the bathroom and are like, oh, I'm gonna go do that. You know, like, I don't think it's not about being a danger to society. For one, I dislike a lot of like overt sexualization in anime or other things. Like, a lot of times, unless it's like very impassioned and loving, like romance or something, I don't see a need for a lot of like sex scenes in like real shows. I'm very, you could say, prudish, but it's more just that I don't like the manipulation of, I don't like the way that a lot of creators use sex to manipulate people into forgetting that their series is lackluster in quality. So like, or like, oh, I would be thinking about how stupidly painful this scene is, but since these two hot characters are having sex, brain gets neuron activation, brain gets wiped, and I'm not thinking about that. Like, a lot of authors use that technique, and I think that it's pathetic. And no matter who it is. So with Absolom, I think the joke with Sanji was funny. I didn't think Sanji, like, I think the idea of Sanji, like, I wanted the invisibility fruit, you son of a bitch. I think that's genuinely funny. Is it a little, the implications are creepy, but again, I don't think that Oda was trying to be creepy. I just think that I think that it's his bias of being a nerdy dude who doesn't think about things the same way 20 years ago as we do now. And, you know, I can get over it, but it is like weird, and it shows like a really weird blind spot to him, and it makes me think of where else that blind spot goes.
Yeah. I think that Absalom, I think that there is that like disconnect between like the like how he was introduced versus how he was then portrayed for the entire rest of the arc. Because when he was introduced, yeah, it was the Nami in the shower and licking Robin. And it's like, that guy is like an evil, sinister, like predator, his introduction is potentially like the scariest, most villainous introduction of anyone in One Piece, weirdly. But then he goes on and is like, oh, I can't look at Nami when she's getting dressed into the wedding dress, and like acting all blushy and shy when he's gonna kiss her while she's unconscious. And so it just seems like, it seemed like if he was gonna just be like a jokey character, then like the beginning part shouldn't have happened. And if the beginning part was gonna matter, then maybe it shouldn't have been so much of a joke later, and he should have just been a straight up evil guy that like, because that's not funny, you know what I mean?
Part of me still wonders how much, like, if Absolom was supposed to be like Moria, like, because we mentioned that at the start, because like shadows are, you know, it's the whole Halloween aesthetic. So like vampires not appearing in mirrors, invisible man, people stealing your shadow. All these things have to do with like the way that light works. So I thought instead of being a darkness fruit, it was going to be like a light fruit. And he was, and then, so maybe this is completely my invention and it doesn't mean anything, but Absolom felt like it was, thank you, Virus and Threat Protection. It felt like Absolom was being built up to be like the main evil bad guy, but I don't know if that changes anything about him being a creepy weirdo, but I think that him being like ultimate evil versus like weird guy, weird, because it's like, yeah, you know, I don't know. The thing with Sanji,
it's a little bit different. I saw a couple people saying like, oh, like my opinion of Sanji got really changed because of the way that he wanted that invisible fruit so he could perv on girls.
That is
I
like
think that-
ignoring the fact that he did that anyway, or like wanted to do that anyway. So like
and
whether or not he has an invisible fruit doesn't really
I also
matter.
think like the way that was portrayed is in more of a joking way, and obviously he doesn't have that fruit, so he's not like you know what I mean. It's like that was another thing similar to the panties thing, where it's like it's clearly a big joke. Like, and because the thing is like Sanji is a pervy guy, but he's still very lovable. You know what I mean? Like, could be very easy to hate him, you know, if he went too far. But like somehow he just stays on the right side of the line. That he's very lovable, even though he's like constantly being a creep.
Mm-hmm.
But it just comes off, I guess, as a little bit more wholesome. For the most part, and I do think that like the fruit thing is more of a joke. I don't think that he's going to be going to bed every night crying himself to sleep because he doesn't have the invisibility fruit. You know?
I thought it was a good joke. I think I guess I could see why people would have that opinion, because I saw that multiple times. I don't know if it was all from the same person, but it is like,
hold it against him because it was
because it's not new information.
Joke.
It's also not new information. Like he's always been that character, so like it's not a surprise to me. It's like it's one of those like, oh, I didn't see that coming, but that's really funny type things. Does that, like, again, I don't, and I think it would be different if I mean, maybe I don't know. Like I feel like if Oda were more of a creep and less of just a guy who liked pinup girls, you know, like if there was some weird, it got released that he did a bunch of doujinshi back in the day or something like that with like a particular theme that is like voyeurism or peeping Tom type shit or something like that. Like if it was clearly, oh, this is his fetish that he's like putting on and like, yeah, like doing that whole thing, that's like a different thing than just making a joke about perviness. Because again, it exists within a continuum where this is a type of thing that happens in anime a lot. Does that make it okay? No, but it makes it culturally acceptable, and maybe not to us, but in this framework, like it's in not maybe not even just culturally acceptable, but culturally encouraged, or encouraged on like a genre basis or a medium basis. So you can give a lot of passes to it. If you're really upset about that, I completely understand that. I'm upset by a lot less in a lot of other shows because I can see the intention behind it, and that's what really matters to me, is the intention behind it. Mm-hmm. I think the intention with Absolom was misguided and maybe definitely poorly executed and clearly tone deaf, but I don't think that it was Oda being pervy necessarily. A little bit, drawing Nami that way, and like, you know, like maybe a little bit, but not like not in a serious or like weird, super weird way. Not any more weird than watching Nami like collapse, breathing super heavily while she's telling Iceberg about like the CP9 attack or something like that, super slowly for like 3 minutes, heavy breathing. And like, or the way that Robin just constantly got beat up by fucking Spandam and falling down in the sexiest possible way with her with her weirdly shaped boobs falling out of her low cut top that never falls down somehow. You know, like it's already like Oda has his perviness. He has his,
and I do know
level,
that some people have said that the anime has like
Of course it does, because it's not just one page. It's like a breathing cycle and a pan up shot, like repeated over time. So yeah, I'm willing to forgive Oda on this one. It's definitely not good. If this was the first arc, you know?
Yeah.
That's different. If Absolom was in the first arc, if this was Buggy and like Buggy was doing this shit or something, and it just like kept happening, and like always, like every arc there was a new guy like Absolom, that'd be different. But this is clearly like he was doing something and he went a little bit outside what is acceptable. But if it's an anomaly,
made, like,
it's fine.
Kind of a bad joke. If it continues and there's like another equally as bad Absolom in next arc, I'll be kind of pissed off.
Again, it's also all about the framing, because like, here's the thing: if a guy's like genuinely evil and does something like that, if they're portrayed like, I guess this is what I was trying to get at with like Moria being maybe Absolom before they were named or whatever, like that kind of link. That's kind of what I mean. Like if a character is like genuinely evil as shit, and they also do this, one, to show that they're that evil, but that's not the best reason, but two, to like prove that they're that evil. Like you set them up to be evil, and then like, oh, they did that. Okay, that changes things. That's I mean, there's no defending that. That's fucked up. But it wasn't that. It was a joke, and it was like there's room for a lot of crazy shit in storytelling.
And I think also a good example is like Lola is very similar to how Absolom was post like craziness at the start, but Absolom for most of the arc, when he was just a silly goofy guy trying to marry an unconscious girl, Lola was like essentially the same, but she came across as like quite endearing and funny.
Well, yeah, a lot of people point out that that's like a weird bias, that it's like, it's not just because it's a girl doesn't make it okay, but it somehow does. And I think that, again, it kind of folds into the same thing where, of this tone deaf, like that, it's creepy when Absolom does it, but it's like funny when she does it or something, It's all for a joke, but like two different perspectives. And I think that it all kind of winds up in the same place. It's weird.
Yeah.
And,
like, I'm not saying that like Lola doing all of that is like the best thing ever, but also at the same time, Lola is a zombie in this. Absolom is still a person, if that like makes any difference. But also, she wasn't introduced in the way that Absolom was introduced.
To be fair, Lola didn't make any sense.
No, I
like Lola was clearly, like, Lola is evidence to me that the whole way the zombies worked, what developed over the course of as it was explained. Because like, if you think about Shindri-chan and her like story, the random woman with the plates and that, like, like it's just kind of like that, and then you with Lola. And then they needed to be scaled back the way the zombies worked, because if they weren't scaled back or then they would have too much free will and they couldn't be controlled by Moria or it all kind of like, maybe all these ideas were like nothing changed, but they were all disparate. And then when they sort of when the different restrictions of ordering them versus them having free will, and them the way all of this, their spirits worked and their interact with their shadows versus the spirit and all this kind of shit, like the way when those things converged and needed to be explained together, then things got a little bit messy. Lola having the same name, for one.
Yeah.
Like, even if the idea is that she's a very strong spirit and has a very strong will, so then she keeps her name and her will and is able to act against Absolom, who's supposed to have the authority to order her around. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't, with what we learned and with how it, fucking Luffy couldn't override that. Zoro couldn't override that. Sanji couldn't override that when they were or Sanji could a little bit, I guess. Anyway, maybe it's not so much. It's not a big deal, but there's a little bit of a contradiction there. I don't know. What doesn't matter. It's just that I didn't like Lola, I guess, as much as you did. She wasn't as endearing to me. It was funny when she would like the whole Namizo stuff, but like, I don't know. It also felt like a way for Oda not to kill Lola when she stopped being a zombie. Like, that was a good opportunity for them to lose that, but then to meet the actual Lola and for her to be just like a slightly more chill, no different name, no different anything, just the same person, just not looking like a pig instead looking like a weird fat lady. I don't know. She was all right. Didn't love her as much as you did, but yeah, I don't know. The whole idea of, oh, Absolom, I'm gonna marry you, that was kind of annoying to me, if I'm gonna be 100% honest.
I mean, I think she definitely was annoying. I guess I just liked her and Nami's like interactions, and then when she like helped Nami escape and stuff, I guess maybe that's it. It's kind of like with the Sanji like filler episode thing. There's like a formula. Nami making friends with like another girlfriend type thing and seeing that bond develop is always very endearing. It's like one of those things that just like kind of works, when it's set up like that. Like how when there's a filler episode, if it's based on Sanji cooking some stuff up, it's gonna be good. Regardless of how good it is. Like there's a baseline of good to it, and Nami, Nami and Lola kind of working together to get rid of like the most hated character of the arc.
Yeah.
It was fun, and it it was just kind of crazy and funny, you know.
Was there any other questions or anything?
Yeah.
Yeah, Absolom, L. For me, Lola, mid. But I can get over it.
Mm-hmm.
But it is an interesting. I hope that people take what I'm saying about like sexualization, because that's an ongoing conversation in like our lexicon. Is the idea of sexualization in anime? It's something that we talk about a lot because we're coming from a Western perspective, because we don't really like shit like that. And it's not just because we're prudish. It's just because it's unnecessary, and it's a band-aid for problems, and people use it to distract people. And then people who are, not in this case, but in other things, like if people don't realize that they're watching the show for their waifu and not for any kind of good story, and then they're like, oh no, but it has such good characters. Like, no, you just want to fuck the one girl character that's hot. Like that's not what good character is. Just because they are conflicted about their love interest and are hot doesn't mean that it's a good character. Anyway.
John Ortega asked, how do you feel about Franky's role in the Straw Hats now that you've had a full arc with him? Also, following that similar train of thought, how do you think Brook is going to fit in the crew in the future?
John Ortega, by the way, like one of our first patrons ever. I think like in the first 10.
Yeah, I think so.
If not like the third or fourth. I think Girthin was number 2. And John might have been number 3. I think.
That sounds right.
Third or fourth ever patron. W. John Ortega. Repeat the question. I wasn't listening.
How do you feel about Franky's role in the Straw Hats now that you've had a full arc with him? Also, following that similar train of thought, how do you think Brook is going to fit in the crew in the future?
Do you want to start with this one?
Yeah. I feel like I really liked Franky. I feel like he really kind of balances out the group weirdly. Like, even though it's adding another person, I feel like because he's able to like pair with, because like at this point we've seen certain pairings and certain team ups, like we've seen like these two people together like multiple times. Like we've seen Nami and Usopp. That's a classic pairing that's happened since they first came along, basically. So we've seen that a lot. So like, how do you keep it fresh? Franky, I feel like in every pairing that he's in every group that he's in every situation that he's in, he brings kind of a new energy to it. And I also like his like ability of like building things super fast that like came in clutch and also is really funny. Like I feel like that's really good for like a crazy moment, but it's also really good for a gag because like he can just build something like almost like he can build this like staircase like almost instantaneously, and it's like no one could do that, but it's fun. And I like that, and I think that Brook can like I'm also excited for him because I think that he's gonna add things in a different way, and I feel like it's always kind of like scary to get a new person because it's like, oh, is this gonna like change it? Is this gonna like ruin it? But I think honestly like this arc, and I hope that this continues, because this arc I feel like Oda was really able to like allocate people properly, give them the right amount of time, the right amount of moments, the right amount of like pairing off with different people, the right amount of successes, the right amount of failures. Like it felt like everyone was being handled really well, and I'm hoping that is based on experience of maybe not doing that in the past, and like he's now getting a better handle on it. So and if he's feeling like the crew could, like, we just got Franky, but if I'm hoping that like we can trust him, and that he knows that he needs Brook in order to like continue telling the story that he needs to tell in the way you know what I mean. Like I feel like if he's getting better at telling the story, and he thinks that Brook is going to make him able to tell the story better with you know what I mean, like having another person to like go through the world with.
Yeah, I think I really like Franky and what he brings to the crew. I think that Oda's doing a good job of, like I said, I think I mentioned this kind of earlier, but that, you know, everyone that's being added doesn't feel too close to someone that's already there. Like you run the risk with Franky, for example, of him being too similar to Usopp or something, you know, but he earns his own place and he feels unique and not like he doesn't have an overlap with anyone else except for kind of Usopp with like their role as, you know, Usopp was fixing up the Mary, not the best, but like that was his job. And then Brook, also very unique character. I feel like if anyone, he overlaps with Franky a little bit, like as far as being kind of a wild card, sort of funny guy type thing. With some serious moments or whatever, but he feels, again, unique. He doesn't feel like he has so much overlap with Franky that he won't have his own place. The problem is just, like I keep saying, that we can only look at one picture at a time. We can only read one word at a time, and not just talking about subtitles. It's like in writing. It's like you read a story one word at a time. So what that means is the more people you add, the less focus you'll be able to give to every person. And I don't think Brook is going to be the last person on the Straw Hats. So, you know, that's exciting because I feel like there are more personalities that could be added to the mix to kind of make the hanging out moments on the Sunny fun, like when we're just like chilling out, and then Usopp and Chopper like running around with Luffy and they're like fighting over a piece of food or something, or like fishing together or whatever it is, and then Sanji's over here doing this and Franky's working downstairs and Nami's like Nami and Robin are like drinking cocktails on the roof on the roof of the cabin or what, you know, like there's that like kind of social element where all the personalities kind of mix and they can make for every person that you add is like a different ingredient. But eventually you won't be able to taste any of the individual ingredients if you keep adding to it. It's just even if everything in there is completely distinct and has its own personality to it, eventually it just becomes too crowded for that limitation of you read a story one word at a time. And like it worked out pretty good this time, but Brook was kind of like a focus of the arc, so we were able to get him with other people, you know, like it worked out, and I think it'll continue to work out, but one or two more members and it's gonna start like feeling like we never see half the crew anymore. Like there's gonna have to be, I don't know, a death or like a minus to it, and I don't think that's gonna happen. Or a split up, like 2 or 3 people go on their own quest or something, like for an arc or two and then come back. Kind of like what happened with Usopp last time. Like it's just hard to like, you can like Usopp's a good example. Is like there's not too many people. Like Usopp had his own arc to explore, and that was a convenient, not convenient as in like a writing convenience, but it was a convenient. Oh, well, while Usopp's going off and doing his own thing, the rest of us can go, and then that's one less person to like have to focus on shot to shot, and then he comes in and it's like a really big climax when he like returns or whatever, is when he's Soga King. Like there are a lot of creative ways. That's one creative way. There's a lot of creative ways to manage a larger cast, but there are a limited amount in that you could do, and eventually it's going to be more and more difficult, especially when you add more and more people. And then you have to start reusing things. Like another person's going to have a meltdown and threaten to leave the crew and then come back at like a clutch moment, or a couple people are, or somebody's going to get imprisoned and taken away, or multiple people, or people are just going to get, you know, zapped and then taken out of it, and or whatever. Like there are creative ways to do it. There's only a certain amount of times you can do each of those things before it becomes stale. And you're going to have to do them more and more, the more people you add. And even if you do, it's still going to be a lot of people. Like it already felt like a lot of people when we were in Skypiea. The crew was already like having trouble there. So I really like Brook, but I just don't know like how much more this can go on. Like how many more people can we add before it just gets like, oh yeah, we haven't really had a Nami character moment. You know, we just joked around with her, and she's been in the background or helping with her climate attack in like a fight, in a clutch moment in a fight, like as a support, and she's steering the boat or whatever. But like most of the time we don't really see Nami or we don't really see Chopper unless something with Dr. Vegapunk's going on. And it's like everybody's tied to their one specific plot thread, and then it feels less like a big crew and more like Luffy and the Straw Hats rather than, a full ensemble band working together. Which maybe isn't too bad. He is the main character, but it's like it becomes a problem. And I don't think it's the kind of problem that I don't think it's the kind of problem that can be solved really well in One Piece, like, because it's so much of the appeal is all the different characters and how everybody mixed together. That's like a big part of what is good about One Piece. But it's just like the nature of storytelling that, there's a reason why there is a main character. There's a reason why there's side characters, is because you can only focus on so much at a time. There's a reason why a lot of Team 7, for example, you got the main character, two people helping him, two like teammates, one rival, one like love interest type girl, and then the teacher, like the commander type person. That's like a 4-person group of people that can steer the whole story. Well, if that continues to grow, there, we didn't see, to keep on with the Naruto example, Rock Lee was basically useless after his kind of arc. We didn't really see much of him. Multiple people just kind of went to the background, and that's just kind of what happens. It just has to happen because you can only focus on so much at a time, and with a world as big as One Piece. So yeah, I don't know. Anyway, I can keep going. I like Brook. I like what Franky has added. I'm excited to see where it goes. I just am very, very afraid of how it's going to be kept up. Mm-hmm. That's basically it.
Mm-hmm. Sanji Joestar asked, now that you guys have a more complete picture of Moria as a character, what do you think of the way he was introduced and executed, his abilities, and his conclusion? I feel like I didn't truly appreciate his character until I saw a comment on a Patreon post talking about how, like, the idea of the villain that was like doing his own thing. He was going on his own quest and his crew died. So then now he's kind of like turned into now he's like, oh, I'm going to make a crew that can't die. It's like that. Like when you say it like that, it's like so cool, like the concept is very cool. But Moria himself, not a very cool dude, and I think he did get better, but at first he just came across as so lackluster to me. Like I feel like I was very disappointed in more. Like I felt like everything else about Thriller Bark was so much more fun and so much more interesting than the main villain, which is kind of funny. I mean, I guess like a good problem to have in a way. Like
if you think about it, that's most things, One Piece, like. But yeah.
I guess I felt like, I don't know, like I was extra disappointed in him for some reason.
Yeah.
But he did kind of like turn it on at the end, and I liked. Like at first his powers just seemed like, okay, we're just gonna get to a point, and like we're gonna have to defeat him in some way, but I did like the whole, like, how he could switch places with his shadow and how, like, the reveal of that, and how it was teased earlier. Like that was cool. And I think I think it's one of those things that, like, his backstory and his overall, like, plot for, like, him as a person, was maybe a little bit cooler in theory than he was shown to be on the screen.
Yeah, I don't know what to he was very fitting in a way.
And I guess it also worked because, like, in the end, he wasn't the real, like, big bad guy.
Yeah.
Kuma was way more scary than him instantly. From the second you see Kuma, you're like, this is the guy. You're like, this is the guy that we have to worry about. Moria is just, he's strong. And I think that is one thing that I did appreciate about Moria, is that he said that he was really strong, and he was really strong. Like he did follow through. There was a lot of lead up to that, of him just, like, Luffy trying to go after him a million times and it not working. But he
had a really good fruit, and he used it really well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was versatile and was good. Yeah, I like Moria. I'm obviously not like my ultimate favorite character or anything, but pretty good. Pretty good. I'd say good. I'd say filled his role well, used his devil fruit well. Yeah, the whole thing with, Luffy chasing him through the forest and then being like, wait, what the hell? It's just his shadow or whatever, and then being able to like switch places and stuff like that. Like it just worked great. Was good. I liked the Oars Bomber stuff. I liked the enemy had a mech that they piloted, and it was actually because of Oars being built up himself before Moria took control as being very powerful. Like it made sense when Moria took control, and with the way that his devil fruit works and how it can like stretch the body or whatever. Because usually when villain uses their mech power at the end of the arc and like the last little bit, it's like, what is this even doing? Like it's like, why are you even doing the mech thing? Like it's clearly dumb and not more strong, but here it actually was more powerful. So it was like we built up Moria as having all these tricks and being really strong and being really big. Built up Oars and with Luffy's shadow, so Luffy's combat capabilities in like a super powerful body that doesn't really feel pain. Combine now, like we build them up separately, then combine them. Then it feels like, oh my god, it's not like with what's his name from Drum Kingdom where he just like, what even happened?
Like
did he transform, or did he like his buddies like combined or something?
Yeah, he had two like.
Oh yeah, he ate them and then shat them out, and they were a mech or something. I don't even remember. It was so dumb. And with Foxy as well, like, oh, I got my mech now. It's like, why? Like it's not. It's like Oda has he has like a thing that he does where it's a mech because it's like a Japanese thing. It's like a big thing. And it's dumb. Like even our guys did the docking thing, and it was dumb.
But that was so.
But it was funny.
I love that, and I love the docking thing because it was kind of like a self-aware, like, yeah, it's kind of a meme to turn into a mech at this point.
And then don't do anything, and it doesn't fix anything.
Turn into a mech for no reason, and it doesn't actually improve anything.
Yeah,
like I like that. I think that's part of why the docking thing was so effective, is because we're up against the first actually like useful mech basically, and then we're becoming like another like useless one like we've seen before. So I liked it. Good W Moria. And it's a question that kind of tacks on to the end of that from Paddington is, what are your opinions on borrowed power-ups, like in the case of Nightmare Luffy? Do you think this is a working concept, and do you want to see more of it? And if so, why not? Why not? I
don't like. No, okay. I like it a lot. I really liked it for this arc, as a way of like I talked about it in the discussions. I liked the way that it helped us match up against Moria plus Oars, because plus Luffy. Like that's a combination that is ridiculously powerful. And unless there's some kind of flaw in Moria's devil fruit, there's no reason why we should be beating them, really. Because it's so like it's built up so much. It's so overwhelmingly more powerful that like just Luffy being Luffy and us being us together, unless it's like a power of friendship type thing, there's no reason why we should be beating that combination. That's three things when put together should be stronger than most shit, especially because we saw Luffy against just Moria and he couldn't hit him. So like Luffy and Moria and this giant body of Oars, which was like overwhelmingly more powerful than like anything we've seen. That's a deadly combination. So like, and because it's tied to lore and expectations for the new world and the future and stuff like that, it's like a taste of that type of shit. It's a like the idea of the temporary power up and the borrowed power up, letting us get on that footing before we're ready, because it's the kind of thing that we're going to be encountering more of once we get to the new world. It's a good framing and theming device heading into the future. I don't like it as a normal thing. I think that it can get old really fast. Nightmare Luffy was really cool because it was a one-time thing. If we have a solar flare Luffy, like, or something, like, or whatever it is, like some kind of like, everyone give Luffy your energy. Like there's like comparing back to Dragon Ball Z, Spirit Bomb's cool. but it's not used all the time. It's used in critical moments. And and even then, it's just like, oh, give me your energy, and it's kind of like a power of friendship or like a power of good type thing. With Luffy getting all of the shadows, it's like a specific thing. I just don't want to see more of it. I don't want it, or a lot more of it. I don't want to shut off from like, oh, well, it sucks that he doesn't want to see more of it because there's going to be a lot more of it, so you better get used to it. I'll accept it, I guess, if it happens, if it's good. I'm not going to like write it off completely, like I'm completely not open to it. But I don't want to see more of it all the time. I don't want it to be a regular thing every arc we give Luffy our powers or something.
Here's the thing. I think that I really like Nightmare Luffy, and I feel like it was very applicable for the point in the story we're at, the type of arc. Like, it wouldn't make sense for Luffy to get Gear 4 in Thriller Bark after he just got 2 and 3.
Yeah, unless he was going to get gears every arc.
Yeah. But then if he gets gears every arc, then I feel like that it's too much. It doesn't make it like we go for like 300 episodes of him not getting anything, and then he gets 2 or like 2 and gear 2 and 3.
Yeah.
So for him to then immediately get another one, it would I feel like it would cheapen it. It wouldn't seem like such an accomplishment. It wouldn't seem like, he went through all of this and then he mastered this element of his ability, and I think that it's important for him to improve over time, but with the way that One Piece goes, specifically for Luffy, kind of for everyone, is that they aren't like training. Luffy's not like on the boat every day, like doing sit-ups and like twisting himself around in a certain way to like create a new move. He's spontaneous. He's in the moment. He kind of unlocks things depending on the intensity of the situation and like what he's been through and the height of the emotions and like, everyone else that he cares about. Like, these things push him to level up, basically. And I think that it would cheapen it if he's just like leveling up all the time when the stakes aren't like Moria with oars with Luffy's shadow is potentially more powerful than anything that we've seen thus far. However, that doesn't mean that is because he's more powerful that Luffy should then ascend to that level of power right now at this point in the story. So I think that the Nightmare Luffy was really good, and I personally would be open to seeing a similar but different thing happen again, perhaps even for a different character or something like this borrowed kind of power up. But I agree, I don't want it all the time, but I think that because there's still there's like so many more episodes to go. Like, it's happened one time within 300 episodes.
And I feel like because we're getting asked this question, it must happen again.
Like, I would be all right with it happening in another few hundred episodes, after maybe we've gone through like another thing where we go and then Luffy powers up on his own, and then there's some other things that go on, and then maybe if we hit another point like Thriller Bark, maybe after another really crazy thing where Luffy levels up, I think that there is a time and a place for this kind of power up, and I can, with how many episodes One Piece has, I can see it happening again, and I can see liking it again. I can see it being applicable again. But yeah, I don't want it to be every arc something that like this happens.
Yeah, same. I just don't. I feel like it was useful as a framing device, but as a way to just hype up other fights, it just seems like it's not the way to go. Is there anything else we need to talk about for the arc?
Yeah, I guess we could talk about Kuma a bit, and just there's one here. NECM 93. I want to know your opinion on Kuma's ability and his personality. I also want to know if you expected One Piece having so many well-written characters.
Yeah, it was. Kuma's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. I feel like he's very interesting.
He's very mysterious.
He's mysterious. And I want to know more of him. I feel like at this point there's been quite a few like higher level people that have been introduced, like sort of like a Doflamingo kind of thing where they like get introduced, they get hyped up a little bit, and then we just don't see them for a while, and then they kind of like mysteriously like fade into the background, and they're gonna come back eventually, and they're like lurking out there. But I feel like Kuma, because we like really got to fight with him, and it's like this whole like weird thing of like he's like a cyborg or like a robot, or he has like this thing, and he's very obedient, but also he knows dragon, but also he is like sparing everyone even though he wasn't supposed to, and like setting up this weird like you take all of this pain onto yourself for Zoro. Like the morals and the motivations are very interesting for him, and I feel like that's what makes me excited to see more of him as a villain,
Yeah, I agree. I think that his personality, the way that he talks and everything is very mysterious, and it makes me, because he showed up to the Five Elder Stars with Doflamingo. I don't know if that's just because he was the last person that he went to get, because since he probably brought most of the people there. Maybe he didn't. Actually, I don't even remember if they pulled up all of their own ships, but regardless, it makes me wonder what Doflamingo's role, like if Kuma is like a double agent, or he's like working from the inside, like he's on the revolutionary side, or was, or is, or whatever, or what his deal is. He's clearly not super loyal to the world government, at least not as his reputation portrays him as. So that makes me wonder how does he fit in with Doflamingo? Are they even that close, or are they just walking together in that one introductory period? Yeah, it's the Vegapunk stuff is really interesting because of the devil fruit technology and stuff like that. His devil fruit and the way that it works, I'm beginning to fear that it's like, the whole idea of teleporting. Like if he's like teleporting places by repelling himself super fast, then there should be a Kuma-sized hole in like every structure between him and where he was from. like he could be, because he's repelling himself just in a straight line. Is he doing it so fast that he just like his molecular structure breaks down and then reforms itself where he's going? Because it was my understanding that he was like teleporting, like blinking places before it was like the repel fruit or the paw fruit or whatever it was. I think with what we learned later about what his power actually does, he just like whooping, and she bounced like a bouncy ball into the sky or something like that, and she's just dead. I don't know what happened to her, because like it was built up like he would just like frink, and she's just gone.
Yeah, and
wherever. Maybe she's fine. Maybe, because I think that's the idea, is that like, because we said that when it happened, it's like, oh, he could send them anywhere, but so we asked them what their heaven is like, so then he can send them somewhere that is good, because he wants them to be gone, but he doesn't want them to suffer. Like, that's an interesting moral that's going on there within his head. But he needs to know what their or maybe it's a condition of his devil fruit that he needs to ask them the question, and then they need to answer it in order for him to send them to where they're picturing, or something like that. All this seemingly is completely fucking irrelevant if all he's doing is brunk, and then they shoot off into the stratosphere like at the speed of light. Like, I don't know what the concept was, but it seems very different from what he currently is, unless, like I said in the reactions, both are true, and it's like a leveled up version of the devil fruit in a way that we can't really interpret or possibly understand. Like, he's still teleporting them, and it's teleportation. It's not just repelling really fast. I don't know.
Yeah, there was a subtle change in like what it was going to be.
It wasn't subtle.
Well, not
that's
very
the
subtle
I think that's the problem, is like, I want to give it a break, but it doesn't feel very subtle. It seems like a direct contradiction with what was being set up, but it feels that way. That doesn't mean it actually is.
Was like when Moria was like, when he asked Moria, and Moria was like, I'm not telling you because I know how your power works.
Yeah, because he did it to Perona, and it succeeded, and then Moria would know, so then he's like, oh, I'm not gonna fall for it. And then it's like, well, fall for what? Because all he's doing is brunk, and he doesn't need to ask you anything, apparently. If that's what he's doing, it might be a separate thing.
Yeah, unless it's just his morals, he needs to ask people first.
Maybe,
but like,
why would Moria say that? I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, Kuma's cool. Kuma's still kind of a mystery. But yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how he interacts when other warlords are around, or other people are around, you know, because it was very self-contained and like nobody would know if he did something off book. But if say we go to get Ace, and then Kuma shows up and gets into the shit with us, then what's he gonna do when there's like overseers and people like his boss is there or whatever, you know? Like then what if there's people reporting to the Five Elder Stars or people reporting to Vegapunk? Like did Vegapunk make Kuma to do these things and to act this way, or did Vegapunk do it to act for the government, but he gained his own perspective being a person and is disobeying Vegapunk? Like, is he disobeying Vegapunk or is Vegapunk disobeying the government? We don't know. So that's the real interesting part. But there is some definite disobedience going on here.
And I think
this podcast is way longer than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, best arc we need to make a long. I think this might be the last question, or at least what we'll end it off on. Definitely not the last question. There was a lot. Another one from Chakoboshi, who asked, "What are your thoughts on the difference in resolve between Zoro and Sanji when it comes to sacrificing themselves for the crew? I'm reminded of when Sanji says, quote, 'Shouldn't it be easy to give up your ambition?' when Zoro is fighting Mihawk. I always felt as though Sanji was giving up on his dream in order to protect the crew, essentially trading one for the other. But for Zoro, his ambition now includes making Luffy the Pirate King, so simply living through the scenario and continuing on to become the world's greatest swordsman wouldn't truly accomplish the goal he has set for himself at this point. I'm interested to hear what you two read into their actions based on what you know them to be."
I don't know how beyond what he said. I don't know if there's a lot more to read into it. What do you think?
I guess it's interesting because I do feel like Sanji, from like when he's introduced, has had like this kind of like self-sacrificing personality to him a little bit more. Like, you know, he has the dream of going to the All Blue, but you know, like I feel like he shows the way that he cares about people, and I don't know, like just something, I don't know, I can't think of specific examples, but he does seem more likely to just be like, I will give up my dream so that you guys can have your dreams. Like, you know, and maybe that's a sign that he doesn't believe in himself as much as he should, or, you know, views himself as expendable in some way. But yeah, I think it is interesting for Zoro. I think that it is a development. I don't think Zoro would have, you know, done something like this earlier on in the story necessarily, or maybe he would have, but you know, it might have been more because he thought that he could take it rather than, you know, that he wanted Luffy specifically to really succeed.
Yeah. I don't really have anything to add to it. It's like they were sacrificed. Like I feel like it's the kind of thing that is very emotional, but it's one of those things that if you dress up with a lot of words, it seems bigger than it is. It's like, yeah, they have dreams, and they are sacrificing that for their friends. But I don't feel the need to get really poetic about it, I guess. Like it has its resonance, it has its reason for the characters and for their relationships with each other. Sanji maybe has been a bit more self-sacrificing. The fact that Zoro he cares so much about his dream and is sacrificing that for Luffy, it's not lost on us, but I don't like, a lot of people talk about it like that's, you know, it's a big moment and everything. So I get it, but you know, it's not all that complicated to me. Like there you go. That's what it is. So I don't know if there's anything I even have to say about it. It just kind of is what it is. I'm sorry if that's like really disappointing, but I don't feel the need to get all flowery about that. It was very manly, very cool, very badass, very emotional, and meant a lot to the character. But there's not really anything to say about it. He did it, and there you go.
That's fair.
Yeah, I feel really bad because I feel like a lot of people want to hear us say something really profound about it, but it's not like all crazy profound. It's a big moment, but it's not that deep. You know, like it's not super deep. It has its depth, but it's not super deep. It's pretty cut and dry what happened. We saw it happen. He sacrificed himself potentially, and his resolve kept him alive, and that's pretty cool. GG. Nothing happened though.
Nothing happened. Well,
go down and nothing happened, that like button and subscribe. And
thanks for listening to an hour and a half podcast where nothing happened.
yes,
We
sorry.
didn't talk about anything. I'm really sorry about it.
Yeah, sorry we wasted your time with nothing. Leave a like and subscribe. Anything else you want to say?
Nope.
Stay tuned for whatever's coming next. We don't know anything about it.
But
Predictions in a word?
oh well, there's those shadow things at the end, but I feel like that might be another thing.
Oh,
like,
yeah, what the
okay, here's
fuck?
Here's the thing. So with the
Yeah,
shadow,
oh my God.
okay, hold on. So with the whole like when we saw the original giant shadows during Skypiea, we were like, oh, I bet this is a thing that's going to come back later. And then it happened immediately. And honestly, I was kind of disappointed that it happened immediately.
Yeah.
But I'm manifesting that this
Is not some kind of illusion.
This will be the creepy giant shadow that we think about from time to time, and we're like, remember that creepy giant evil volcano looking glowing red eye thing that potentially killed Lola and all her crew? Like, I want it to be the kind of thing that like we like almost forget about, but not quite. Like every once in a while we're like, oh yeah, remember that still hasn't come back, but it's kind of like looming over us.
Yeah.
And then I like, you know what I mean? I want to give it some time to like marinate. I want Oda to like really cook on it. I want him to go with his first idea. I want him to like make something that's going to be crazy. I feel like I would really like something like grand and mysterious and like, I don't know, like supernatural or like, you know what I mean? Like just on that, like transcending the bounds of nature. Like if it's going to be like a giant creature or like a, you know what I mean? Like if it's the way that it's presented, like we talked about with the shadows, how they're presented as like this, like gods or like we've seen giants. These are like on another level. Like the way that we felt when we saw that, I want the delivery on that from this kind of thing that we've seen. Like I want like this I don't know how to describe it. Like I want it to feel
let's not like
huge.
you know, you're setting up this big thing. Let's not, you know, take a step back and like undo the buildup. Let's follow through with the buildup. It doesn't have to be the first, like exactly what we think necessarily, but rather than, oh, big scary giant figures, just shadows from the sky. Instead, big giant shadowy figures, actual threat, actual consequences. Lola is dead. Like, you know, or not necessarily, but if we see her again, she's like fucked up and maybe lost her crew of faceless dudes. Like something, you know, follow through. That's what we want. Follow through on the build up rather than, oh, we built up and then took 2 steps back and oh, it actually isn't even as big as we thought at all. There was nothing to really get worked up about.
We see this giant thing and like, okay, there's the whole thing of like Oars being like the continent pusher, but like he wasn't really that big at the end of the day.
It
but,
shifted
like,
back and
forth. I would
forth.
love the idea of like this thing that is in the water. Like what if this is like a
Oars'
giant
dad.
guy and it is like literally like walking on the ocean floor with its head and like weirdly shaped shoulders.
I think that's what Oars was supposed to kind of be.
Yeah, but I'm saying like
idea.
he obviously isn't that at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure
The perspective
he was
changes
crazy
a lot.
powerful. And he was really huge. Like he was giant, but like the ocean, like to be able to stand on the ocean, like, you know what I mean? Like that would be like
Unbelievable.
That would be incomprehensible essentially. Yeah. And like, I'm not saying that I'll be disappointed if it's not exactly that. I would love something that like is like a part of the world or like a part of the, I don't like a Cthulhu kind of like
like exactly
thing, like a presence or like a thing that's like okay, the Grand Line isn't just like islands, it's like, you know, crazy weather patterns and like there's all these things that kind of make it what it is, and a lot of that is like generally irrelevant to our journey. But I would love for like something like that. Like before we go into the new world, I would love to have like this moment of like, this is like the craziness of the Grand Line. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that. I feel like that'd be cool.
I agree. One last thing, as far as the Grand Line. So Sanji wants the all blue. Have we mentioned this? All of the places in the reverse mountain drain to one place, right? So like, isn't that just the all blue?
Like the entire Grand Line, you mean?
Technically, like that part of it at least. Like, I thought this since the beginning, but I don't know if I've ever actually said it because I didn't want to be dumb. But like, I know it's not actually, but like I feel like it should be.
Sanji's
like,
gonna be like, the all
we
blue
passed
was the
it.
ocean we've been in this whole time.
Yeah, maybe the all blue is the friends we made along the way. But I've always thought that, just as a random thing, as far as like, since we're talking about like the Grand Line, like maybe the idea of Reverse Mountain came from the idea of the all blue. You know, like the idea of all of the oceans converging in one place. Like that's kind of what Reverse Mountain was to begin with. Is Sanji literally just going to get to the end of this journey and be like, oh, well, it was here. Like Laboon was sitting in the all blue this whole time. It was just that one patch of ocean.
Laboon ate all the fish.
Yeah.
That's why actually Laboon destroyed the all blue. They can't get through anymore. He's just sitting there like.
Maybe he swallowed the all blue in like his giant mech body that he has now. Anyway, I don't know. I feel like it got pretty negative there, but not really. Like I guess here's what it is. One last thing. I feel like the reason why I feel okay saying all of this is because of how much I liked Thriller Bark. Like the reason I feel okay about like, you know, because we've been trying to be really positive lately, especially, but like, and I feel like it's paid off because we really did like Thriller Bark, and it's probably our favorite arc. So that's why I kind of feel safe sharing all of these things that are less than 100% excited for everything. Like a little bit of hesitancy on a lot of fronts. Because I feel like I'm really in it. You know, like I feel like this arc I was just like really in it. So if I'm a little bit cautious and a little bit pessimistic about certain aspects of One Piece, I hope people can get over it, because we really did love this arc. It was really, really good. And I did not expect this to be almost 2 hours long. Yeah.
We were like, oh, nice little 45-minute podcast. Let's just do it. No.
Well, anything else you want to say?
I think that's it.
Alrighty. Leave a like and subscribe, everybody. We'll see you guys in the next one. I'm Carson.
I'm Lindsay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.